Welcome to WitchLit, a place to talk about the craft of writing and writing the craft. I'm your host, Victoria Raschke, author, publisher, witch, and nosy Scorpio. WitchLit is brought to you by Thousand Bolt Press, a family-owned independent publisher established to produce the books we want to see in the world. Titles including Changing Past by Yvonne Abarrow, Conjuring the Commonplace by Lane Fuller and Corey Thomas Hutchison, and my latest book, Verona Green, can be purchased directly from thousandvoltpress.com or wherever you buy books. Zoë Howe is an internationally published author, artist, and witch. She's the author of Witchful Thinking, The Wise Woman's Handbook for Creating a Charmed Life, as well as an array of books published, including her best-selling biography of rock's own witchy woman, Stevie Nicks, Visions, Dreams, and Rumors. A regular host on the award-winning UK station Soho Radio with her popular show, The Rock and Roll Witch, Zoë is a Royal Literary Fund Writing Fellow and has appeared on UK TV and radio outlets, including the BBC and Sky Arts. Her work has been acclaimed by publications including The Guardian, The Sunday Express, Teen Vogue, Rolling Stone, and elsewhere. Zoë is an initiate of Gardnerian Wicca. Her latest book is Scorpio Witch, co-authored with Ivo Dominguez Jr. Zoë Howe, welcome back to WitchLit.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be back.
Oh, it's so nice to have you back on. And I can't wait to talk about this book with you. I feel like we should retitle the podcast the Scorpio Power Hour for this for this episode. But you've been on the show before, so you've answered our why write question. So I kind of want to mix it up a little bit and ask you, why write this book with Ivo? Why write about Scorpio witches?
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think the last time we met, when you very kindly invited me on to talk about Witchful Thinking, which had just come out, we were both really excited because we realized we were both Scorpio witches. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Because there just feels, I mean, we are biased, but it feels like there is a real thing about, the Scorpio witch, because Scorpio, it's a witchy sign. That is not to say that people of other signs, of course, aren't witchy, that's of course not. But there's something about, we're Samhain babies. We're children of Halloween. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of almost naturally predisposed to, at the very least, to kind of a bit of an interest in the occult, and often we're a bit fearless, aren't we, Scorpios? So there is that kind of approach that we might be happier to kind of delve into certain places where other people might think, oh, I'm not sure about that. So I'm rambling, but why write the book? I was very thrilled to hear from Ivo a couple of years ago, and he was obviously in discussions with Llewellyn, our publisher, and they were setting up this amazing series. And I was just thrilled to bits that they thought of me for the Scorpio Witch book. And obviously, because Witchful Thinking, I couldn't really avoid, when I was writing that, talking about being a Scorpio witch. Anyway, it's so kind of tied up. The two things are very tied up together. So I just thought that sounds like an incredibly happy place. And I have huge respect for Ivo as an astrologer. I love astrology. I don't profess to be an expert, but I really love it. I love reading brilliant astrologers. So it just felt like a no-brainer to me, to sort of to work with him on this. Obviously, he takes care of the sort of astrology side. It's not like we were kind of sitting in a room working away together. We both kind of knew what we had to do and then kind of got on with it and brought it together. And, but it was just a really enjoyable project to work on.
Awesome. So, I mean, was it different for you, like kind of writing in the guardrails of this kind of book where you kind of had, like, your sections were already set for what you had to write? Was that different than kind of other stuff you worked on, or?
It definitely was different, but actually really enjoyable because, it can be very beneficial being given boundaries to work within. And I think sometimes, as you know, with any kind of creative work, it's very exciting being given a blank canvas, but at the same time, sometimes if you're not given a deadline at least, or some kind of parameters or a brief, that can be slightly panicky. So, well, I don't know where to start, and I don't know. I could do this, I could do that. I'm also on the autistic spectrum, and that just means that I sort of seem to experience all my thoughts in one go and want to do everything at the same time. And then I end up, just either wanting to explode or not doing anything, not achieving anything. So being given those specific sections, which I knew were, obviously in the whole series of the books, was quite exciting to me, because I think, when you give different writers the same brief or the same prompts or sections to work on, it's really exciting to see how different the results can be. So, I knew that obviously within the section titles that they gave me, there was freedom really to kind of, obviously they were clear on what they wanted, but within that, they gave me a kind of freedom to really kind of go where I wanted with it, and just sort of kind of go deep, go granular on the sort of Scorpio Witch experience. Because I know what they're doing, Llewellyn, as well. There's a reason for everything they ask you to do. So it was just very enjoyable. It all made sense to me what they wanted, and it was just, as I say, great to have those boundaries to work within, but also lovely to just have that kind of freedom within that to kind of just sort of really think about what I wanted to kind of share in terms of experiences as Scorpio Witch, or sort of suggest in terms of things that have kind of helped in the past. Because you know what it's like, Victoria. It's not easy being a Scorpio sometimes.
No, I have joked that we often catch the most flack, I guess, of all the signs. People just they feel a certain way about Scorpios.
They do. And sometimes we can find ourselves living up to those preconceptions as well. And that's something I kind of wanted to think about as well, because it's like, well, how much is expectation? I remember it's not as bad now, actually, as it used to be when I was growing up. But my mum and dad were also very much into astrology and the world of spirit and occult matters, spirituality. And so there were loads of really great astrology books on the shelves. I was really lucky. It was just all around me. I know that's a huge privilege, because a lot of people don't grow up with that. And there was, Linda Goodman's Sun Signs was just a fantastic book. I loved that book. But there were other ones that took a really kind of weird, unhelpful view of particularly Scorpio. And some of, reading that as a kid, you're like, hang on, is that, am I really like that? You read these sort of, they're sort of almost pretty much saying they're criminals, basically. Don't trust them. They're likely to be kind of, become addicts, and all these very negative things, and not a huge amount on the positive side. And, and I suppose you can go either way, can't you? You can go, oh, well, fine. If that's who I'm supposed to be, I'm going to large it up and I'm going to totally go for it. Or you can say, well, actually, I'm in charge of me. And that's a very Scorpio way to be as well. I'm actually going to rebel against all that rubbish and be who I decide to be. So I suppose but it's always there, it's always in your mind, these preconceptions that people can have. And we do need to be careful not to kind of, live up to it in a way. Because there's something kind of quite fun about being seen as like the dangerous one of the zodiac and that kind of thing. There's a certain allure to that as well. But seriously, we do need to make sure. And I think one of the things I wanted to really look at in the book, in my bits, was the image of the scorpion as a creature. And I think part of why people are like, oh, Scorpio. I mean, we both will have grown up with that. I remember even as a little girl, people go, oh, Scorpio, stinging the tail. Oh, and when you're a little girl, maybe not so much these days, but certainly our generation, you were kind of often conditioned into you've got to be nice and you've got to be sweet. And so the idea that you might have some awful sting in the tail and that you're actually someone who's a bit frightening, potentially, it felt like the wrong thing to be. But I didn't really know why, because it's like, well, I'm just me, but everyone's telling me I've got this awful sting in my tail and there's some kind of lethal, I'm just getting on with my life as a sort of 6-year-old girl. And so I didn't really understand what that was, but I just thought, I need to be even nicer, even sweeter. I don't really... It was like there was some kind of like this disapproval that was already set up against me.
Yeah.
Of course, it would have been tongue in cheek, but I'm a Scorpio, so I take everything seriously. So I couldn't tell the difference. And now, and so I was like, oh, no, you don't have a sting, really. I'm a really nice person. Now I'm like, people go, oh, sting in the tail. I'm like, yeah, I have got a sting in the tail. So you better be careful. Yeah. So just watch it, man. And I've made friends with the sting. And I really wanted to reflect on that in the book, because I think a lot of us feel that. And it's like this kind of, this thing. That is actually, the sting is our friend. The sting can be our protector, our guardian. We've got this built-in incredible protection. We've got this, if we want to reflect on the Scorpio creature archetype, they've got an amazing exoskeleton. They actually glow in the dark. I didn't know that. I thought, I want to know about scorpions, like really know about them. There's all these amazing things that they can do. We don't get told that. We just get told that, we're really lethal and dangerous and who knows what we're going to do next and everyone better keep away from us, which is really upsetting when you're a kid. So I wanted to kind of reframe how we look at the sting and make friends with it and actually make use of it. Because I think, looking back at my childhood and my youth, my God, I could really have done with my sting, but I pushed it down and I thought, no, I don't want to be that person. And actually there were times when I really could have done with a bit more of that kind of hardline self-respect and protection because, as a girl growing up, you know what it's like. So I really would like to kind of, for young Scorpios to see that and think, yeah, my sting is part of me. I'm proud of that. It's beautiful. And also that kind of cliche. There's a lot of cliches about Scorpio that are really unhelpful. And one of them is, the self-destruct thing. And I do relate to it. I've grown up sort of with that in my character, I suppose. But it does make you question, is it because I've been told that's who I am? Or do I, you have to pick it all apart. And Scorpio is very good at that because we're really analytical and obsessive. So that's like a happy day for us. But, the self-destruct thing, when I looked into it again, and I thought, what does the actual scorpion do? Because there's this cliche about the fact when the scorpion is surrounded by a ring of fire, they turn their sting on themselves, they commit suicide. No, they don't. I actually did some research into this. They don't commit suicide. This is what, at least unless anyone has other research that definitely says otherwise, they don't. They actually, it will be very hard, if not impossible, for their sting to actually penetrate the exoskeleton for a start. But also to kind of, so there's all these kind of myths, and then we think, we reflect the kind of archetype. But it's just really interesting unpicking it all and then making your own decisions about what kind of Scorpio you really want to be on your own terms. And, so it was kind of a journey working on this book, and a really positive one that actually left me with even more pride about being a Scorpio witch, because there's just... There's a, obviously there are layers to all of the signs, and it very much depends on what's in the rest of our chart as well. And when I looked into mine, I've got loads of planets in Scorpio anyway, so I was like, okay, fair enough, I'll just stick with this. Yeah. But it was definitely very interesting looking into all that.
Yeah, there are so many things you touched on there I want to ask you about. But one of them, I think, really reading your sections of the book, especially, and Ivo's kind of evaluation of Scorpios and like sun sign Scorpios, that we do kind of get this message, I guess, if you're around astrology or you're interested in it at all, that Scorpio is the sign to watch out for. They can be vengeful, they can be, like you said, they can be self-destructive, they can, all of these things. But and I think, I've talked to therapists about this a lot. It's like you always kind of feel like you have this, and I think either you or Ivo brought it up in the book, I can't remember now which one, that this nagging feeling that somehow you're a bad person, that you have to compensate for that. And I was like, oh yeah, it was like, oh, somebody just touched that button. And kind of this idea that, one of the things that people miss about Scorpios is that we are incredibly loyal. And that's why we get so mad when we're betrayed, because we will die for you. But then when you betray us, we're like, no, just no.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. And there are so many wonderful qualities, I think, that Scorpios have. As you say, the loyalty, that's such a huge one. And I think, people maybe come to value that a little bit, kind of, when they grow up, they realize, what that really means. And you certainly miss it if you don't have it in a partner or a friend.
Yeah.
But also our sensitivity and our empathy. And I think part of that, it's like the crab, Cancer the crab. when you have that kind of exoskeleton, that hard shell, or the hard sort of, the sections of the exoskeleton, we have that because in a way we are very sensitive and we do need to protect ourselves. And that's another part. That's a big part of the kind of my magical practice. It's very much focused on protection, on boundaries, because they are important. And I think Scorpio is a very sensitive sign, not just in terms of empathy, but in terms of being, everyone's naturally psychic, I know, but, probably being more easily kind of drawn into that world, or it just kind of, is very natural to the Scorpio, and which is wonderful and gorgeous and lovely and something I would not want to swap. But at the same time, we then have to go, okay, that's great. That's part of me. How do I just make sure I'm in control of it rather than it being in control of me? How do I make sure I psychically protect myself, and keep up the old sort of spiritual hygiene? That kind of thing is a daily thing, also sort of hour by hour thing sometimes, depending on who we're around. But that is part of that Scorpio sensitivity. And I think, like all the water signs as well, there is a sort of maybe a greater chance of that being something that comes almost unbidden. And I think Scorpio, just speaking from my own experience, and I'm sure yourself, I know lots of witches who happen to be Scorpios. And it's interesting to me that magical work, magical practice, arcane interests, esoteric interests, they do seem to be quite common among Scorpios. And, whether you're part of a magical community or you're a solitary practitioner, it's a thing, it's a thing. It's natural to us, I think, to want to look at those things. We like to lift up the stone and see what's underneath, rather than kind of think, oh, there might be something dark or wriggly under there. I'm just going to move away and, sit in the sun for a bit. We're more likely to go, I'm going to go in the dark cave, actually, see what's in there. I'm not afraid of it. In fact, I want to make friends with it and work with it.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be. So, very interesting. It's a real preoccupation of mine anyway. So, it was a real joy to kind of actually get into the writing of it with this book.
So with the writing of it, I guess if you were going to then write Scorpio writer, like how do you think that those characteristics impact your work as a writer?
Well, I think they are. Well, I suppose I can only speak from my own experience. I only know my own experience, but I think that the Scorpio traits that are really helpful for me as a writer is I have no issue with solitude at all. And of course, writing is a very solitary business, as you know. So that's fine. It's almost too fine, actually. I'm kind of very happy to be a hermit, and sometimes have to really kind of push myself out of that state, because I think, no, this is, ultimately I have to see people sometimes. It's healthy to go out and be in the sunshine. So I'm very, it's a natural state for me to kind of be happy on my own, in my own company, doing my own thing. I'm also very obsessive, another sort of classic Scorpio trait, which can be useful. This is the thing, sometimes we're told about these things. We're not always told how we can positively channel those traits, and they can be really positively channeled. They can be really useful and helpful because we will do what it takes. We'll take the time that it needs to take. We probably, often to our detriment, the detriment sometimes of our health, but, we might kind of just dive into something and think, I'm not going to walk away from this desk until I've finished, until it's dark, or maybe it's dawn the next day. It's not always a healthy way to be, I admit, but, we are very committed. We're very disciplined, and there's a kind of hyper focus that Scorpio brings that is really useful when you've got to write a book, or when you've got any kind of creative deadline to do. I've always been a bit like that, with visual art as well. My husband says, have you switched your ears off again? Because I literally, when I'm working on something, or a piece of art especially, and he could be speaking to me, I literally can't hear him. It's like I'm just so absorbed. It's almost ridiculous, but it does mean I can just get into that world completely. As I say, also on the autistic spectrum, so that can be a symptom as well. So it's been interesting for me. After writing this, actually, I did sort of undergo assessment for autism, and I've realised, oh, hang on, I've suggested all these things are actually Scorpio traits, which I think they are, but also some of them are symptoms of autism as well. And so that's been an interesting journey, for want of a better word, to kind of really work out where the two kind of meet, because sometimes they can feel very similar. That kind of hypervigilance, the sort of obsessive side as well. But as I say, with creative work, sometimes that can be a real bonus. And I think I love the Blind Boy podcast. I don't know if you know Blind Boy. He's an Irish podcaster. It's actually thanks to him that I kind of realized it might be helpful for me to undergo assessment for autism, because I just, you know, how you just sort of go through life and you think, well, that's just me. That's normal to me. And I realized he was talking about his recent autism assessment and diagnosis, and talking about different symptoms. And I thought, well, that just sounds like me though. That just sounds like kind of normal to me. And then I realized, I thought, hang on, okay, I might have to look into this. And it has been such a relief, actually, to do that, because it's made sense of a lot of things that throughout my life have just not made sense. I've not understood why I couldn't sort of feel, normal in certain settings, or certain things that are just very easy for certain people. I can't do, and I have to almost pretend. And I think women in particular are very good at masking, about, camouflaging. We camouflage our anxiety, and because we're more likely to be brought up to be, make everything nice for everyone else, basically. So it's been a lot of unpicking, but I know I didn't come on the podcast to talk about neurodivergence, but
no, but I mean, I think it's amazing to me how many writers I've talked to who are some kind of occultist, who do have some kind of neurodivergence. I mean, I think the Venn diagram of those things is oddly a circle.
Yes. So. Yeah, absolutely. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? It really does make you wonder, because, as I say, when you look into those symptoms, if you like, they can, I mean, I know some people kind of almost describe them as superpowers. And I know other people don't feel comfortable about that. But I can sort of see how some quote unquote symptoms can be really channeled and used in ways that are really helpful when you're doing certain types of work. But if you're doing other types of work, like, working in an office or doing something quote unquote sort of more conventional, it can just be a nightmare. It can be absolutely impossible. So it's very much about kind of finding what's right for you, and to bring it back to the sort of the Scorpio subject. Same thing, really. We have very particular we experience things in extremes, and I think that is something that is normal to a lot of Scorpios, depending on the rest of their chart, of course. But rather than go, oh, why am I like this? You just think, well, how can I work with this? And I think that's what's great about this whole series, actually, Llewellyn's Sun Sign series, is it's just a really compassionate, lovely series of books that just like, okay, here are the things we've been told. Here are the things that we're likely to experience. And here's positive ways of using the stuff that we sometimes try to kind of push down, and that, then spring back at us in other ways. And I think Scorpio is really good at shadow work, but it's something that is very beneficial for anyone of any sign. I think we're just lucky in that respect, because we're likely to just want to dive into that anyway. That sort of stuff interests us, whereas other signs might be going, oh, I don't know, maybe another day. But it can be revelatory and really beautiful.
It was like, I think a lot of us are comfortable walking in our own shadow. I mean, that's definitely true. So I'm curious what other planets you have in Scorpio.
Let's see if I can remember. So I've definitely got Venus in Scorpio. Do I have Mars in Scorpio? I forgot Uranus in Scorpio. Oh, I have to bring up the thing. I've got it on a chart. I should have come prepared.
Oh, no. I mean, it's
a fair few. I think there's 5.
Oh, wow.
It's really interesting, actually, because one of the things that really struck me when I had my chart done, because when you normally see an astrological chart, it's sort of, lines going all over the place. It's like a kind of spirograph kind of thing. And mine was just sort of, everything was just in one part.
Yeah.
Everything was just like in one bit. It's just like this one dark bit of the chart, and everything else was just like a blank page. I was like, okay. But that's kind of fun, because in a way, I relate to that. It's like all my planets are in the dark half of the year, it would seem.
Yeah.
And again, I can work with that. It's my favorite half of the year, certainly the dark half of the year, always has been. And again, knowledge is power, isn't it? And they say, know thyself. When you have that at your fingertips, you can work with it, you can celebrate it, you can integrate it in really lovely ways and into your magical practice and your creative practice.
Yeah, it's like my chart looks like that too. I have like
Really?
3 things in Scorpio. So I'm a double sun moon Scorpio.
Oh.
And then my black moon is also like the Lilith is also in Scorpio. But then everything else is in Libra and Sagittarius. Like it's all right there.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So you're so even more so, I think, than my chart by the sound of things. But that's kind of a nice balance as well, because you've got a bit of air in there and you've got a bit of fire in there as well. I think my moon is in Sagittarius, which in a way, because there's a lot of kind of, quote unquote, sort of more kind of, what's the word I want to use? Sort of the sort of more reflective, sort of shadowy signs, if you like, to have my moon in Sagittarius. I thought, well, at least that's a little bit of fire, a little bit of light. Kind of sort of cheers things up a little bit. So I'm quite happy, on the dark side, but it is nice to have a little kind of glimmer of sparkly Sagittarius just to kind of illuminate it a little bit. It's fascinating. And Ivo is so interesting on this. It's been a real joy to read his writing through the process of this.
Yeah, I think it was his 4 Elements book introduced me to the idea that, each of the water signs had their own fire sign, like that basically Scorpio is the fire of water. Like introduced me to that idea. And I was like, oh, that makes so much. I mean, it just instantly made sense. The first time I read it, I was like, oh, that explains so much.
100%. Because I think a lot of people who don't know about the elements, they assume that Scorpio is a fire sign because, the Scorpion, they're not associated with sort of being in the water in the same way, a fish would be or a crab would be. So I suppose it's surprising to some people that we are a water sign, but we're certainly the most fiery water sign. But I also really love his reflection on the fact that, our fire is often expressed in the way that ice can burn. And I thought that was just, spot on. I completely got that because I thought I'm more likely if someone wrongs me rather than kind of, sometimes I have been known to tear them off a strip, but sometimes I've been known to freeze them out. Like it's a real Cold War and they don't know what I'm going to do or when I'm going to do it. And that is a very Scorpio thing.
Yeah, that is definitely more my approach. I do not have the scold, I guess. That's not, I think I got told so many times when I was a child that you don't get to do that I just internalized it. So my mechanism is also just ice queen, we're done.
Yeah. And in a way, I think that can be healthy, healthier than, I suppose it depends on how we express it because we do it, if we're holding on to that for years and years, which also is very Scorpio, the whole grudge holding thing, we're very good. It's one of our special gifts is holding grudges for many years. That can be quite a normal thing for a Scorpio to do. And we talk about that in the book and how to maybe kind of look at the kind of theme of revenge and vengeance, which is so tied up in the Scorpio story, and think about, whether that's healthy, whether it's really productive, whether it actually maybe sometimes is going to actually just poison our energy and take up our precious time and energy. We've got to really take care of our time and our energy and our psychic gifts and our spiritual energy. We've got work to do. We all do. So in a way, sometimes you have to really kind of be a bit strict with yourself. And think, is this actually going to have the effect I really want it to? Is it going to ping back on me? And I think sometimes, always exceptions to the rule, but I've trained myself to kind of think, sometimes I don't think anyone gets away with anything, actually. I don't think anybody ever gets away with it. It might look like they do, and that can be very infuriating. But I think, there are forces so much greater than us, powers out there that we can't even contemplate the might of, and I think they're probably better at us at dealing with things that need some justice bringing to them, and we draw upon deities like Hecate and, the Morrigan and people like that. And depending on our traditions, of course, we'll, have different connections and different affinities. But that shows us, I think, that there are aspects of the divine that we can leave certain things in their hands quite happily, and they will take care of it, and then we can move on with our lives. And I think sometimes I've had to learn that is often the healthier way. And the universe can deal with things in far more interesting and creative ways than little old us. And so it can be quite amusing to see how things play out. And you think, well, actually, I just handed that over, but I'm quite glad it turned out that way. But also, my conscience is clear. So that's a nice way to feel.
Yeah. But it's interesting.
Hypothetically, of course.
Hypothetically. One of the things I think is interesting, and you touched on this a little bit, is that, I think there is a hyper-focusedness for Scorpios to go deep. And maybe that overlaps with some neurospiciness too. And then, but and that ability to carry grudge, that other thing that those two things do is also, I think, Scorpios are torch carriers.
Right.
It isn't always a grudge. Sometimes it's an unresolved thing that we carry a torch for a long time. And not just necessarily relationships, but lots of things. But yeah.
That's so true. We don't flit through life, like your typical air sign. I've often sort of looked with great wonder and admiration at my Gemini parents, for example, who, especially my mum, I'm always filled with admiration as to how she can sort of float above things, literally. Well, not literally, obviously not sort of physically, although, she's a magical being. And I just think, God, that's in exactly the same sort of situation. I would be, totally bogged down in all of the stuff, and how I want to bring justice and all this kind of thing. But you're quite right. I think sometimes that I love the phrase torchbearer. That makes complete sense. That's very Scorpio. And I think the ability to have that kind of strength and long-term kind of fortitude, a lot of the traits that we think about when we think about Scorpio are also traits that come with a really good magical practitioner. And I think one of those is, because when I think, what is magic? Well, magic's so many things, but some of the words that really instantly spring to mind to me are control, transformation, power. Those are all traits that are intrinsic to the Scorpio. And I think that's why we take so much joy, I think, and feel very natural in magical practice and working with that. Will. I mean, when you think about, to know, to dare, to will, to keep silent, that's just a regular Scorpio day. That's just,
yes.
That's just, and so it's intrinsic, it's very natural. And I think it's just, but that isn't to say that we need, that's there, that's part of us, but we have to work on it and work with it and control ourselves within it. And rather than letting our gifts kind of control us, we want to be deliberate about it. When I was younger, I suppose this is quite normal when you're a kid, but, it was very clear that there were certain things that I suppose now I would see as different about me, certain abilities, and certain things would happen, and which was great and really exciting. And at the same time, you think, oh, you'd experience synchronicities and you think, oh, how exciting. I've just experienced some really strange synchronicities. But you have to kind of, I suppose maturity brings with it that kind of, yes, and what does that mean? Yes, and how do I work with that? What's it saying? Why is it here? Who is it? It makes you question, or that can be a way of sort of developing your practice as well. So I think that also is very Scorpio. We're curious. We want to know what's going on. We like to analyze things. And I think, if you're working with spirit, for example, I love working with spirit, and I'm not, the most experienced. I'm not a medium, but I love the sense of feeling kind of close to the spirit world, or when you get those little signs. I love that. I feel reassured by it. I'm not frightened by it.
Yeah.
But I've had to sort of learn to be better at questioning it as well, and think, well, rather than, oh, that was nice, think, well, who is that, and why are they here, and why are they here now, and what do I need to know? Just sitting with that a little bit, being still with it is really is really beneficial and just a really lovely thing.
I guess kind of maybe tangential to that or connected to that. Like I think about like there are a lot of writers I know who have multiple creative things, and you have music and you do visual art, and then you have magic as well as being a writer. So for you, like when you have that urge to create that, whether it's our hyper focus or whether it's all those things, how do you decide what channel something goes in? Does it come to you that way, or
this is an ongoing issue for me, really, is because I think I sort of understand it now in a slightly different way because of the assessment I'm undergoing, I guess. But I struggle a lot with knowing what to allow myself to focus on because I want to do everything at the same time. And if I suppose that sounds maybe at odds with the hyper focus thing. But the thing is, I want to be as hyper focused on everything at the same time. And that way, obviously, madness lies. But I think it also there's that horrible feeling of there isn't enough time to do everything and read all the books and do all the painting, and when I'm painting I'm not making music, and when I'm making music I'm not right, and it's just I've had to kind of just take the heat off myself a bit and think, right, that what informs all of it, I suppose, all of the creativity is the spirituality, is the magic. That's at the heart of all of it. Certainly with visual art as well, I find that to be a beautiful way of meditating and going into a different time and space. You get into the so-called flow state and time just seems to stop. And if that isn't magic, I don't know what is. But also you are literally manifesting. You start with a blank page or a lump of clay that doesn't look like anything much. And in a couple of hours, there's something there that wasn't there before. That to me that's magical. It's a magical thing, and we can channel different energies into what we're doing. I remember once I did an exhibition called You Have One New Message, and it was a kind of and I was thinking about messaging and code, and of course code, very Scorpio, peak Scorpio. And I wanted to make kind of collages where I was making kind of subversive tarot cards, but I also made a collage with a letter that I had made in Morse code. So I printed all the letters out, but in Morse code. And then I cut them all up and just sort of, created this artwork with it. So I knew what it said. And I had a very intense intention while I was making that artwork. I was sending a message to someone very specific. And no one else was going to know that. That was someone might have intuited it. I don't know. But that was for me to know. That was a nice little Scorpio secret. But the act of doing it and the time it took to do it meant that I felt by the end of it, my message was delivered to that person through the airwaves, whether they saw the artwork or understood it or not. It didn't matter. Because I think it kind of gets our rational mind out the way. Making art or other people will have other ways of doing that, but that's one for me. Once we've pushed our rational mind out the way, we start doing things with our hands and pouring, really focused intent into what we're doing. Really interesting things can happen. And I think the same with writing as well. Writing, everyone's different. Everyone has a different practice. And I love that. I find it fascinating. I love hearing how other people work. For me, writing has always been a big part of it. And it's a physicalizing, if we just, people who aren't professing themselves to be magical practitioners do it every New Year. They sort of write down the things they want to let go of and then they burn it. That's an act of magic. That is an intentional thing. They have got that thing out of their head onto the page and they've burnt it. So writing things down, just the sheer act of it is powerful. And I think, even if you don't believe in magic or whatever, most people acknowledge that, I think. So to me, it is all completely tied up and tied in. And music as well, vibrations. We can change state with the song. And that has always been a real preoccupation of mine as well. So, songs, whether we're writing it or listening to it, it can change our state. And again, it goes back to that thing of magic being transformation.
Yeah, it's funny. You think about the visual art and music and writing. And there's a book by Laura Esquivel who wrote Water for Chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a novel and it's about the power of music and in in the world of the book, only music therapists are allowed to play music because they've realized how much power music has over people's emotions. So it's basically licensed to play music. And part of the book is a graphic novel. And when you bought it in hardback, when it came out originally, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a CD that you were supposed to play during the graphic novel part. It's just this fascinating multimedia piece. And I was like, okay, that to me, like that ability to like pull all those pieces together. Like I was just I was obsessed with this book when it came out because of that. And I think that's part of it, this idea of all of these things together, like in one place.
Totally. That sounds amazing, by the way. So thank you for telling me about that book. I'm definitely going to be looking it up. But it's so, I can believe that, because when you think about also just the way frequencies are used, and how a certain song can, be played in a nursing home and calm everyone down, or a certain song can be played and used as an instrument of torture. That's hugely powerful. So it's like, you are working with just power, but it can be used in different ways. And I think, coming back to Scorpio, one of the words that we will always see, whoever's writing about Scorpio through the ages, the word power will come up. But it's often used in a kind of pejorative term, like, the sort of power freaks and stuff. We have a choice. Yeah, we are powerful. We're all powerful, but Scorpio is powerful. You're a double Scorpio, so my goodness, that's off the chart. So we have a choice. We can use that power for good. Has it not occurred to any of those kind of astrologers who weren't always that kind about Scorpios? That maybe that might be an option for us. And I think most of us are independent enough in our thinking that we can make that choice. We don't need permission or inspiration from someone else to say, that you could actually do this or that. We can get there ourselves, no problem. And I think one of the great things about Scorpio is that sort of independence. And probably, at worst, a bit of a slight disdain of other people telling us what to do. And it's like, actually, I actually know what I'm doing here. Sometimes we don't always know what we're doing. But, so sometimes we could come a little bit the other way, I think. But the willpower of Scorpio, that is another thing we hear about a lot. And that's something, it's interesting. It comes up a lot. Sometimes when I'm sort of doing interviews and they say, what kind of magical tools do you like to use? And I love a good magical tool, but I think there's a lot of people spend an awful lot of money that they might not need to use, but we've got to do what's right for us. But personally, as a Scorpio, and I didn't think of it as a Scorpio thing, but now I'm talking about it, I think it is that we think, well, stuff is very nice, but we don't actually need stuff because we have a mind, a laser focused Scorpio mind that can that can do all sorts of amazing things. And tools can help us direct energy, absolutely. And they're lovely to work with and they can be reassuring. And I think maybe if you're starting a magical practice, to have tools can maybe convince you that, okay, I'm doing this now. I'm going into this new space where I'm going to be, doing something a little bit different that's apart from the mundane world. But I think, speaking for myself, I'm sure maybe you as well, it's quite reassuring and lovely to think that if you're out and about and you think you need to do a little bit of a working, you don't have to go, but I haven't got but I've got, you've got your mind, you've got you've got your energy right there. You've got everything you need. And I think if you are a Scorpio, you're going to take all this pretty seriously. You'll be focusing on this a lot of the time. You'll be quite disciplined in terms of your magical practice. So, which is great, because when you are in those situations, hopefully a lot of the stuff that you need is just at your fingertips, because it's a preoccupation. It's something you're committed to.
Yeah. It's funny, when I first started practicing, like one of the, I guess for new witches and, new practitioners, the grounding exercise, like the center and ground. And I had already been doing it. Like I didn't know it was magical to do that. I just knew that I had been doing it. And I don't know if that was like that innate sense of just connect to, the powers of the earth or whatever. But it took me a while to realize that that was something that other people struggled with, because it was just so natural to me.
Right.
Like just, center and ground there instantly, only having to think about it. And I do think that probably influenced the rest of my magic for that same reason, because it was like, well, if I can do that without a tool, if that's really, then, how much stuff do I need?
Yes.
Not to say that I also don't like a pretty thing,
Yes.
but how much do I really need? I mean, to me, if you give me like a lot of cash and say you can buy any magical thing you want, I'm going to go buy books. I mean, honestly, that's what's going to happen. So
yeah, I am absolutely with you. We are so similar. Victoria. It's so true. But it's a lovely thing. And I think it's a lovely life. I love the magical life. It's everything. And it weaves its way into everything. And everything does, we're working with energy all the time. So whatever word you want to kind of use, you can either be conscious of that or not. But when you're conscious of it, you have more choices in life. And that those things can benefit others, and that is part of what's lovely about it. And I love that you just intrinsically knew to do that. That was just something that was natural to you. Because I think, and I suppose when you're growing up as well, you find yourself doing things, and then when you're older, and you sort of connect with a magical group, perhaps, and it's sort of, and you think, oh, well, I've just been doing this naturally. I love that. But I think also, when you are magically inclined, shall we say, you are naturally going to be doing things, whether it's from your own instincts, because this is just you, or because you might be channeling, but maybe not even realizing you're channeling. But I think when there is that predilection to magic and spiritual life, however it manifests, you kind of light up a little bit on the astral planes. And, I believe that spirit, connects with that. And there will be kind of guides on the other side that connect with your qualities. They might be a bit similar to you, and they might think, oh, okay, this person's a bit like me. I might kind of inspire them with this. So I feel like we're never on our own. And I think that's something that I was thinking about a lot when I was writing my bits for this book. Because I thought, solitude is really important to the Scorpio. We don't mind being on our own. In fact, sometimes we actively prefer it. We need our space. Sometimes we have a bit of a short rope for being in company or certain types of company. And that's okay. We should be okay with that. But also, when I was thinking about it, I thought, but maybe one of the reasons I don't mind being quote unquote on my own is because I never actually feel like I am on my own, because I love feeling connected to, the unseen world. And I feel like, I don't know, I as I say, I'm just at the sort of, we're all just kind of learning all the time, aren't we? But I do feel accompanied and embraced and guided, and I ask for that guidance, and I feel like there is a communication, and you can never feel alone when you kind of open up to that, I think. And I was sort of predisposed to that way of thinking because I come from a family who went to psychic circles, and my grandmother was doing that kind of thing. My grandfather was a healer, all very much on the quiet. This is a working class family, so they were quite. It might have seemed outwardly at odds with your kind of average working class Liverpool family, but that's who they were, and I love that. And so I suppose that was never going to seem like a leap to me, I guess, is what I'm saying. But it is a beautiful thing. And as I say, sometimes this, a connection with spirit, you're not ever going to feel lonely with that. So okay, we like to be alone, but are we ever really alone? And it does make you want. It's the same with like when you're making art, you think, oh, how did I come up with that? Or where did that song come from? Well, it might have come purely from your imagination or various things that are just completely buried in your subconscious, and out they come. Or it might be a combination of that, or it might be come from somewhere quite different. It might be channeled. It's very exciting. But at the same time with that, it's a balance between embracing that and going, yes, that's beautiful. I feel honored that those sorts of things are happening. And also, I also just want to make sure that I'm always safe within that, and that I'm not just sort of opening the front door, metaphorically, to anyone who wants to wander in.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's in the book, and also go into that in wishful thinking as well. But, psychic protection, just being aware of that, and being aware that while they were kind of annoying naughty people on this side of the veil. There are some annoying people on the other side too. And, you might not want to be just wide open to everyone, I guess, because as exciting as it is to realize, oh, wow, I'm connecting with something here. And this is really, there are people there are forces that might be kind of dishonest or just opportunistic, picking up on picking up on one's sort of possibly untrained enthusiasm for connecting with spirit. And as I say, while there are opportunists on this side, there are opportunists on the other. So it's about being judicious and always making sure that you're in control of your experience as best you can be, because we've got the power to that. We don't have to be tossed about on a kind of sea of whatever happens, and I'm just sort of like experience. We are in control, and I don't need to tell you, we're both Scorpios, so control is a word we're quite happy with. Yes. We're quite comfortable with. Yes.
Yeah, I've tried to tamp down my inner control freak where it comes to other people. Like I'm still that way with myself, and that is an ongoing process. But I think one of the lessons for me getting older is that there are a lot of things about myself I can control, but I actually can't control other people. And I think, younger me was like, if I do the right thing, somehow that will control their behavior. Like there is some manipulation in that, being a people pleaser.
Yes. Yeah.
And now that I'm older, I'm like, that's not really what I want. I don't really want to control them. I want to control my reaction. Am I always successful? It's an ongoing process.
We are all works in progress, aren't we? And I really relate to that you're quite right. The people pleasing thing. Again, I think it's really common, experience for a lot of girls. I'm hoping the new generation isn't quite as conditioned that way. I don't think they will be to the same extent, but certainly our generation, the ones before, I've been through a bit of a process with this, and I'm not kind of angry about it anymore. Whereas at first I was, and I suppose you have to go through a bit of a process. But it's like, do you know what? We were conditioned that way in some ways because that was how we were taught to survive in a patriarchal society. It's like, do you know what? If you're not all nice and pretty and charming and making sure everyone else is okay, where are you? Even you're just going to be invisible. No one's going to want you. And if a man doesn't want you, then what's going to happen to you? And that is a very kind of archaic way of thinking. And I'm sure that your younger listeners will be like, what on earth? That sounds ridiculous. But it's a survival thing. So I can understand why there's a bit of a hangover of that kind of, I suppose, 50s attitude to just try and make sure that little girls were kind of okay. But it was so kind of misguided and so unhelpful. And I think part of kind of making friends with the Scorpio archetype and those parts that are supposedly unattractive about Scorpio and actually finding them really beautiful when I think about them has been so important, because it's like, do you know what? The reason that a lot of people, I can sort of see under the layers of, sting in the tail, dangerous Scorpio. What's underneath that is actually, oh dear, someone who is comfortable in their own power. Not keen on that. Better squash that down, make them feel bad about themselves before they mature and realize that actually those things that we're putting down could be some of the best things about them and could actually guarantee a fantastic life. So yeah, I mean, that has been a big thing to sort of come home to in a way, and it's been lovely and also frustrating because you look back at all those times in your life where you dumbed down or squashed down those things that were actually really gifts, like the sting. I see that as a gift now, and I didn't before. And I completely connect that with, patriarchal prejudice and fears, the fears of the patriarchy that have seeped in so many ways. And it's like, especially, a woman in her power or someone who is, not heteronormative, feeling okay about themselves and feeling in their power. That's very scary for some people. And I hope that's changing. But yeah, coming to that kind of understanding is, I think, really important.
Agreed.
And I realize I've talked a lot.
No, it's wonderful. It's always nice to talk to people who do interviews or do media, because I can just kind of listen. It's always a good thing. But we do try to keep it to an hour. So this we're a little behind because we all had COVID, and so we didn't get episodes out. So this will actually air in June, but I want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can find your stuff online or your radio show, and if you have anything coming up over the summer, maybe event-wise.
Thank you. Yeah, I suppose my main thing that I would like to plug and share is other than obviously Scorpio Witch and the whole Llewellyn Sun Sign series, which is wonderful, is my show. Yeah, Rock and Roll Witch. It is a show I've been doing for a few years on the lovely Soho Radio, and they can be found at www.sohoradiolondon.com. And every month I appear as if by magic on the airwaves for 2 hours. And it's a kind of a mix of just sort of warm vibes and, folklore and sort of cosmic mystical musings. And also I tie them in with tones of the Wheel of the Year. So all of the songs on the playlist are songs that I have associated in some way with a seasonal turn of the wheel. So obviously we just had Imbolc and the show went out obviously early. I know we're going out in June, but but it's I take that as a kind of as the inspiration, and then I kind of build the show around it. Mm-hmm. And I also include things like witchy cultural picks. So if there's like an exhibition on that is sort of witch adjacent or something that people who are into folklore or the occult might be interested in hearing about, or a gig, then I will share that on there as well. So it's just lots of fun, and all the shows that have been out so far can be found on my Mixcloud page, and it's just mixcloud.com/Zoë Howe Radio Archives, and it is in the reposts section. That is where you will find all of those previous shows, so people can fill their boots on there if they wish. They don't have to.
They are great. I listen to them a lot, actually.
Do you? Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
And I'll make sure links for all that are in the show notes too for folks so they can find it.
Thank
you. Because you've done this before, that we have a little game of chance at the end. That is my very Scorpio nod to this podcast. So I am going to roll a die, and depending on what number I roll, you'll get a question about all those lovely Scorpio topics: death, sex, religion, politics, or money.
Right.
And if I roll a 6, you'll get to pick which one you want. And I think last time you got religion, but I wrote a new question for you. So,
okay.
Let's see how things go. 5, money.
Money.
Yeah, which I think is always interesting with Scorpios. So, and for creative types, one of the things I got told really early on as a writer is you can write for awards or you can write to make money. But apparently you can't do both, which I think is probably not true, but that's the saying, right? So for you, for your art, for your writing, for your music, worldwide acclaim or enough money to not have to worry? If you had to pick one, which one is it really for you?
Well, you see, the thing is, had this been sort of maybe 10, 20 years ago, I'd be like, worldwide acclaim. Now I'm not bothered about worldwide acclaim because, I don't know. I suppose it depends on who you want to appeal to. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know if I want to appeal to everybody. I've met some people and I'm not sure about them. So, the Scorpio hermit in me is kind of quite happy. As long as I appeal to cats, and they still like me, then I'm really quite happy. Yep. With how I'm going. So I suppose, I think a lot of creative people accept that they have to do a few different things to keep the lights on, and that's fine. But no, I mean, in terms of the writing I've done over the years, it's certainly, the motivation was never money and could never have been money. And, whenever I've thought about, people who sell millions of books, and I just think about the kinds of books they write, I just think, I just haven't got it in me. I take my hat off to them. It's just not the kind of writing I can do. Mm-hmm. So in a way, I mean, neither isn't a very positive answer, is it? But I think
it's a very Scorpio answer.
Yeah, I'm opting out. I'm just being completely Scorpio nihilistic and I'm going to completely be perverse and opt out of both. But I think as long as, if I could maybe tweak with my pincers the worldwide acclaim answer and just say, the respect of people that I respect, that, the respect of people that, it doesn't have to be the whole wide world, but just people that I think are cool for the right reasons. That is good enough for me. And if I make most of my money doing other things, or just have to do a million things to kind of keep it all going, I'd rather do that than kind of compromise by doing something that kind of just eats your soul. And believe me, I have done that in the past in different ways. And you think, I've just got to survive and stuff, and it will be fine. And you do these things when you're young, you have to, and that's fine. But sometimes the cost is very great in other ways. And so, but that's what getting older is for. You kind of understand that, and you realize what's possible and what you're comfortable with. And again, coming to terms with things like autism has been very important, because before I would push myself into work and jobs that just were really making me ill, physically, mentally ill. But I was like, no, everyone else can do this. What's the matter with me? Let's just come on, just do it. No one else seems to have a problem with this kind of stuff. And it just was really having a bad effect on me. And now, to be honest, the assessment, the autism diagnosis has been so good for me, because it's like, you know what? Lots of people who have, one with autism spectrum feel like you do in different ways. And when you know that this is a thing for you, rather than have to kind of force yourself into it anyway, because, well, apparently everyone else is fine with it, rather than do that, I have a lot more compassion and patience with myself, and go, do you know what? That's kind of killing me a bit. So why don't we not do it and do something else? Because you're autistic and this is just not healthy for you. And in a way, we shouldn't have to have an excuse, but it has given me permission to kind of turn myself away from things, go, that is not good for me. It might be fine for other people, but they're not me. And so, I guess that ties into sort of doing stuff for the money that is just soul crushing. And that means different things for different people. I know that, but it's certainly helped me not just try and tough things out, because Scorpios are tough, and we're very forceful, and that includes being forceful with ourselves, and that isn't always very good for us, is it?
No, and I think that, like, giving yourself permission to be kind to yourself. I mean, I think you're right. There are times when you're young or when things are bad where you have to do things to survive.
Yeah.
And then get through them. But that doesn't mean you can't still be kind to yourself in those places. And I think that's, sometimes it's easier to do than others. It's hard to be kind to yourself when you're in the soup and things are bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
yeah. No, I mean, it's like you have to make choices sometimes. You have to make compromises. But I think back to sort of times when I've kind of like thought, well, I write, so, I should be, if a little kind of freelance job comes up at a newspaper, for example, that's writing, so I should be able to do that. This is going back a long time. And I would do it, and I was kind of okay at it. But it was so, I think, again, another Scorpio thing, we throw ourselves in so completely to what we're doing, heart and soul, that if we aren't believing in it, it's just kills us. It's awful, because we can't always detach and go, oh, this actually isn't really me. I'm just sort of going through the motions. I just go home at night and I've got my pay packet and it's fine. That's not Scorpio. We don't work that way. And so, and that's a big one to kind of come to terms with for our mental health, I think. And it took me a long time to accept that. But when I did, life got a lot better and I got a lot less angry.
Yeah. I mean, it was a big lesson for me to learn that I am not my job. And it also took me a long time to go, when people ask me what I did, to say I was a writer, even when that was my main job.
Oh, isn't it funny?
Yeah. It's funny to me, like I guess what we think we deserve sometimes, even so when, true. It's the thing I do. That's my main job now, is I write and I have a podcast, and, granted, I'm not the one paying rent. I'm in a privileged position that my husband's job covers that stuff. And, but
But I think that's been the way for a lot of writers over the years. And, it's if you're, writers write, you are a writer. But isn't it strange that we don't, when do we feel like we're allowed to use the word? It's so ridiculous.
I was like, I've got books on the shelf with my name on the spine, and yet it was hard. And so now what's really funny, and I will 100% give my husband props for this. He actually did it before I did. People would ask him what I did, and he said, she's a writer, even when I still had a full-time day job.
He would say that. Great.
Yeah.
And I was like, hugely powerful.
Okay. Yeah, maybe he's right.
Isn't it interesting that we need sometimes, it's very common, isn't it? When we hear it from somebody else, it's like, I'm allowed to use it now because it's sort of been validated externally.
Right. Yeah.
And, and that's because you're a modest, lovely person. And I think, everyone's different, but I think women in particular, we find it hard. There's a lot of imposter syndrome going around. It's something we're all quite familiar with, I think, with a few exceptions.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we do need to hear it from someone else to say, well, yeah, you're a writer. Yeah. Of course. Even there's like the same sort of thing. I just kind of, it just is this kind of discomfort with using the word of like, well, that's what you do. That's like, that's what you do. When do we go, I'm just going to say it. This is who I am. Doctors don't feel like this, do they? Then they go, am I really a doctor though? I know I've been doing it for 25 years, but I don't know if I can really, I'll see what someone else says. It's just, I know it's not quite the same, but it kind of is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when I first started the show and I had the little intro that, I'm your host, Victoria Brashke, writer, podcast, whatever. The first time I recorded that bump, like it took me, I can't even tell you how many times. And it wasn't the nerves of recording. It was, can I say this? Wow. And I was like, yeah. And now I've said it so many times, like it's real in a different way. Or I listen to myself say it when I edit the transcripts. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's real. So,
isn't it funny? It's really strange. But I bet, just people who've been doing it for like decades and decades probably still feel exactly the same as we do.
Yeah. I'm always afraid somebody's going to come along and go, oh no, we know you didn't. No, sorry. Well, let's take all this back.
We've all done lots of research on you. We've decided, even though you've written all these books, that you're not actually allowed to call yourself a writer.
You're not really.
What were you thinking?
I'm like, you know what? Own it. I mean, call yourself a unicorn. Do it. Like, I think we've all earned it. And what is it in this current climate of whatever the hell is going on? Take joy where you can find it. Good Lord, please take joy where you can find it.
Wise words indeed. Absolutely. And we should feel comfortable with knowing who we are. Mm-hmm. And that's a very Scorpio thing. And if that's been squashed out of us for whatever reason, that's very sad. We need to get that back. We need to revive that because, if we don't know who we are, then I don't know. That's not a good state of affairs. But again, I hate to keep using the word patriarchy, but I think that's kind of what patriarchy wants.
Yeah.
And so we have to fight that.
I mean, I think the white supremacist patriarchy overlay of the world has a lot to answer for.
Yes.
And, smash it any way we can.
Smash the patriarchy. Absolutely. I think we should all be more cat as well. I mean, throughout this whole interview, I've been looking at your beautiful cat just sitting on your knee. And your cat is like, yeah, I'm a cat. He's not thinking like, am I a cat though? Is anyone else that, it's like that. I'm a cat. Just deal with it.
Yeah.
Be more cat.
Be more cat. I like it. Awesome. Well, and I think that's a beautiful place to wrap things up. So thank you so much for coming back on. This is a joy to catch up with you.
Oh, likewise. It is just always so lovely to speak to you, Victoria. Thank you very much for having me back on the podcast.
Awesome. And let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. And please do send me, is there a mailing list for your episodes? Because sometimes I miss things on social media, but I would love to mention it on the show.
I don't have a mailing list, but I will remind you when the episode's coming out.
Well, just or anything, that you want me to plug on the Soho show, I would be happy to do so. And I realise unless I kind of see it in a thing, then it's just like so much stuff just kind of passes you by, doesn't it?
Yeah,
On the old
definitely.
socials. So
Awesome. Yeah, I would love that.
keep me posted. All right, Victoria. It was lovely to speak to you as always.
You too.
And thank you again for inviting me on. It's a real pleasure.
Always. Anytime. Anytime.
You take care now.
WitchLit is a production of 1000 Volt Press and is edited by Julian Rashke. Our intro music is Cosmic Glow by Andrew Kay, and our outro music is Voices by Alexander Shenekar. Transcripts and all our previous episodes are available at witchlitpod.com, and you can follow us on Instagram and Threads at witchlitpod. Please help other witches find us by leaving a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you for listening to and reading WitchLit.